This is Matthew Cratter from Trade University, and today I want to talk about Ethereum stakers, the move to proof of stake, and how Ethereum stakers really are the ultimate parasites. Parasite is a word that's taken from the realm of biology. The economic term for it really is rent seeker, which we're going to be talking about as well. Neither of them are a very good thing to be accused of being. But this video is really a response to these comments that I've been getting recently. And this is not a single comment, but I put a bunch of them together to try to make a representation of what people have been saying. And they go something like this. Proof of work is really wasteful. You spend a fortune on hardware, which rapidly becomes obsolete, and then you need to replace it. And you also need to waste lots of electricity in the process. And these commenters contrast this with proof of stake. Proof of stake is so much more elegant and clean and green. You just stake your 32 ETH and then you are set forever. So the context for this is that Ethereum is moving from proof of work to proof of stake in a couple weeks from now. And this ideological battle is currently being waged online. And so I want to do my part to really show how proof of stake is the ultimate rent seeking and how proof of work, this turnover in mining equipment and Bitcoin miners, rather than being a bad thing, is actually a very good thing. So it's well known that under proof of work, Bitcoin mining machines, also known as ASICs, these things wear down over time, like any other hardware. We also have the situation where new expensive ASICs mine much more efficiently than old ASICs. So if you've been in the business for a while, you really do need to upgrade to the latest model of ASIC if you want to stay competitive. And then on the electricity cost side, electricity costs obviously vary over time. You could try to lock in prices using special negotiations, especially if you're a large Bitcoin miner or mining company. But even then, even if you try to hedge your electricity with some sort of forward agreement or forward contracts, you may still end up getting your hedging wrong. So it remains a fact that Bitcoin mining is extremely competitive. It's very, very difficult to do. You can try to mine from home. You can try to mine as a large company, but in either situation, it can still be a very difficult process. And one way we know this is if we look at who the big Bitcoin mining companies and big Bitcoin miners were around 5 years ago, they're not the same as the ones today. And in 5 years from now, we're probably going to have a completely different set of Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin mining companies. Now, this is what a competitive free market looks like. There's lots of churn. There are new entrants. There are old entrants dying off. And the last few months have been especially hard on the Bitcoin mining community as prices have fallen and stagnated. There have been a lot of Bitcoin miners selling their ASICs at fire sale prices as part of this. So this is a difficult industry. It's a competitive industry. It's an industry with razor thin margins at most times. And this is one way of telling that it's a fairly free market and a competitive free market at that. Now let's compare this with proof of stake, which is what Ethereum is moving to in a couple weeks, as we said. Basically, with proof of stake, all you need to do is come up with 32 ETH. You stake them, you sit back, and you collect money for the rest of your life. That's assuming that Ethereum lasts for the rest of your life. But the general point here is once an ETH staker, always an ETH staker. There's no competition as there is with proof of work mining. You stake these ETH, they never wear down like a Bitcoin mining machine does. You don't need to replace them. You can just stick them there you can stake them and then earn money for the rest of your life. So this is really the very definition of rent seeking, where you get to post something and then collect a toll for the rest of your life without doing any sort of productive activity. As we said, the biological equivalent of rent seeking is the word parasite. Rent seeking is this economic concept when someone, usually an entity that lobbies the government, tries to get extra wealth without doing anything productive. And if we take a look at what the major rent-seeking industries in the US are, you will notice a lot of them. And these are the ones that always have the worst consumer experience. Banking, healthcare, absolutely terrible consumer experience. And now crypto as well, not Bitcoin, but crypto. And we can see this with firms like Andreessen Horowitz going to Washington to lobby them and try to get loopholes for Web3 that will benefit their investment funds. Venture capitalists are very good at trying to fund rent-seeking businesses. Now, after the move to proof of stake next month, Ethereum really will become the center of crypto rent-seeking. And this is because beneficiaries of the ETH pre-mine will just get to stake their ill-gotten ETH. Many of them have staked it already, and they'll get to earn money without doing anything productive. The more ETH that you have staked, the higher the probability that you're going to be chosen as a validator and chosen to get to validate or mine the next block and then earn more ETH as a reward. So proof of stake ETH is basically just like the fiat system, in which many cases, due to rent seeking, the rich get richer for doing absolutely nothing. It's one thing if you want to take your earnings from PayPal and use that to build electric vehicles or to try to go to Mars. Obviously, the electric vehicle space is subject to a lot of rent seeking as well. But this is still an example of doing something productive rather than just setting up a toll booth and collecting tolls because the government gives you the right to do it. So it's no wonder that Vitalik and other insiders want Ethereum to move to proof of stake as soon as possible. I wanted to end with a side note. Is it bad for the environment that Bitcoin miners eventually break and need to be thrown out or recycled, these ASIC machines we were talking about? Maybe it's a bad thing, but it's funny because you only hear this critique of Bitcoin mining machines. You never hear this critique of internet servers. There's never an environmental group or an ESG group who says, you know what, I'm done using the internet, I'm done using Twitter and Instagram and YouTube because these servers are very wasteful and they break and they end up in landfill. So this is the double standard, and it's the same sort of double standard we have when we have environmentalists flying on jets, on private jets around the world and saying no carbon for you, but lots of carbon emissions for me. I think one of the most disgusting things, though, is how Ethereans try to dress up their rent seeking in ESG, green, environmental garb. And I think this marketing strategy at least, is eventually going to backfire as it becomes more and more apparent how proof of work mining is actually quite useful, not just for securing the purest, most neutral, decentralized monetary system in the world, but also for doing very simple things like stabilizing power grids, making use of methane from dumps and garbage, and also making use of stranded energy. So Bitcoin mining has all these different uses that we're just beginning to explore, especially the stabilization of power grids, which I need to talk about in a later video. So it's actually a very bad time for ETH to be pursuing this switch to proof of stake. But it's very clear that these comments are correct, that in proof of work, you do need to constantly keep replacing the hardware because it's a competitive, free market. You don't have to do anything once you've staked your ETH, simply because this is the ultimate form of rent seeking. And these rent seekers, if Ethereum succeeds, which I don't think it will, but these rent seekers will be your new masters if this happens. And so rather than having the rent seekers at the US Treasury and the Fed, we will have the Ethereum rent seekers. This is why proof of stake is so disgusting and so ugly, and why we need to educate as many people about it as possible. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.